You may have seen this photo of Alan Kurdi, or this photo of Amran Daqnish. Both images are of a Syrian child devastatingly affected by the war. Both images also went viral. However, unfortunately, many still don't know of this boy, who is among the very first casualties of the Syrian civil war. In April 2011, Hamza Ali al-Khatib participated in a protest against the Syrian government in the city of Dar'a. He was later arrested by security forces. Hamza's body was returned to his family a month later, bearing signs of extreme torture. The shocking details of his death, including signs of mutilation and other forms of torture, drew widespread condemnation and brought attention to the human rights abuses occurring in Syria. The incident served as a symbol of the violence and repression taking place in the country and fueled further outrage and protests against the Syrian government. The attention these three children received in the media gives us a microcosm of how information about Syria reaches virality. The early atrocities like that of Hamza that happened early on in the conflict went unnoticed. The photos of Amran Daqnish and Alan Kurdi struck enough of a chord to bring us back into the mainstream again. Then we slowly faded to obscurity. However, because of this, an underbelly was allowed to rise, which gave Assad the perfect opportunity to rewrite history and set the narrative for all remaining future assaults on the Syrian people. Russia Today reported that Amran Daqnish was bombed by rebels and forced his father to appear for an interview. Tima Kurdi, Alan's aunt, spoke out against Western intervention and jihadists rather than Assad, who has perpetrated the most atrocities in Syria. Tulsi Gabbard visits Syria. Activists and nobodies intent on denying Russiagate and countering mainstream news reports on Assad's chemical attacks, Putin's invasion of Crimea, Uyghur oppression in Xinjiang, Maduro's corruption in Venezuela became prominent independent journalists seemingly overnight. It must have been a sight for sore eyes for Assad. The authoritarian bargain is a deal meaning if you play by a dictatorship's rules and don't try to ruffle any feathers in society, you should be fine. Being political in Syria is not very common. You can discuss foreign affairs all you want, but internally there's not much room for dissent. This is why only people in exile can really criticize the regime. However, if you still have family back home, it may not be so easy either. For Syrians with relatives in the military, this bargain can be a bit sweeter, but also at a cost. Step out of line, you'll be the first to be struck down. I bring this up because I don't know what everyone's situation is. I cannot judge what other Syrians decide to do with the situation that they have been dealt. That being said, some choose to not only stay quiet, but to even perpetuate the lies of the Assad government and engage in covering up the atrocities it has committed. In a digital age, you had no excuse to fall for such lies, and if you lived outside of Syria at the time, not only did you have a responsibility to be informed, but to actively call out disinformation and Assad apologia in whatever way you can. Whether you like it or not, our views on Syria depend on a series of conditions. Factors like when you were born, how much media you consume to get your news, and which sources you use in particular. All of these will inevitably play a role in defending your perspective on the conflict. Often, Syrians inherit many of their views from their family, which I admit applies to me to some degree. As a Syrian, my source is my family back home, my parents who grew up in Syria, and the various Arabic, English, and French language media sources that cover the conflict. If you do not speak Arabic and or don't know any actual Syrians whom you can ask, you may go online and just Google your question and click whatever appears first. This presents a set of unique challenges for you. Do you rely on imperialist, Western, warmongering, lamestream media, or do you veer towards so-called independent, red alternative media sources that are against the mainstream? As somebody who has faced every stage of skepticism regarding the Syrian conflict's media coverage, I think I might be able to help. You see, I went from initially believing anything the mainstream media like CNN said to believing Syrian and Russian state media, and these days I am constantly scouring every source I can possibly find on a story in order to see what the messaging is. Along the way, I've supported the anti-Assad revolution, I have denied Assad's chemical attacks, and I supported the Rojava project in northeast Syria. Believe me when I say all of this confusion could have been avoided and made much easier if I simply stuck to speaking to as many Syrians that I can, rather than rely entirely on the media at all. Fact and perception are almost just as important in this war, since the evidence is often hard to come by concretely, and even after something has been long proven, perception still affects the decision that stakeholders in this conflict make. To be clear, I never really supported anybody specific in this conflict and simply preferred to criticize and oppose everybody to varying degrees. As I have said in my Who to Support in Syria video, there are no good guys at all. There were only people who were less reprehensible. My loyalty and uncritical support was devoted only to Syrians I deemed to be genuinely working for the interest of Syrians above all. As Robin Yassin Kassab put it best, when people ask who should we support in Syria, I should say in Syria no political party, militia, or army is worthy of our wholehearted or uncritical support. No ideology either. What we should support are the community-grown, democratic and quasi-democratic institutions and the civilian communities they represent. These people deserve support which is both critical and absolute. Critical because nothing should be uncritical. Absolute because these survivors inside are under continuous and full-scale military assault, beleaguered and at risk of extinction. And just like there are no good guys in the Syrian conflict, there are no good media networks to fully depend on either. Everyone is trying to push a message, and it may help to understand where certain journalists are coming from to understand why they describe the conflict in the way that they do, including the stories that they report about, choose to focus on, and so forth. In your research on Syria, you may have come across an outlet called the Grayzone. This network has been talked about in length from other creators such as Bad Empanada and Drunk Ronin, which I'll leave a link to in the description, so I will not cover them as deeply. But as I've said, the best people to seek out information from in this conflict is actual Syrians, and it should go without saying that non-Syrian journalists like Max Blumenthal, Aaron Maté, and Benjamin Norton are not exactly Syrians who speak Arabic or have family back home, or people that they can specifically ask to confirm whether or not what they're hearing is true. In fact, it's even rumored that Ben Norton switched sides because he was visibly anti-Assad in the very outset of the revolution after a Syrian girl broke his heart. This is not to say that any non-Syrian is a liar or even that only Syrians should be trusted. In fact, I'm going to focus on 3 Syrians who have made a career off of reporting about Syria without being very critical of the Assad government. While I may make another video in the future about the wide network of Vatniks and Russian propagandists who thrive off of atrocity denial in Syria, I wanted to first start out by emphasizing the futility of getting news from Syrian Assadists. The 3 people that I'm of course referring to are Richard Medhurst, partisangirl, and Kevork Almassian. Before I start bad-mouthing these people, I think it's important to address their arguments first. Although they're not credible people in the first place, and their arguments are almost laughable and unworthy of entertaining, I want to do my due diligence so that their fans don't just try to say that, oh, he's just attacking their character and not their arguments. Now, I'm not going to go through their thousands of videos because they've been at this for a while. I will highlight their individual eccentricities in a moment, but basically their ideology can be boiled down to the following 2 terms. A lot of suckers believe that only the USA is capable of whitewashing their crimes and perpetuating imperialist propaganda. In fact, China, Russia, Cuba, Iran all have sophisticated networks to disseminate propaganda favorable to their own causes. Campists are a branch of anti-imperialists who only oppose the most powerful of the imperialist camps, that of the Western hegemonic order. This is why you may find yourself agreeing with a lot of the things that they say, even the majority of the things that they say. Their views can make them very vocal critics of Israel or the US invasion of Iraq and Vietnam. These viewpoints have become extremely popular due to the failures of Western policies over the years, as well as decades of blatant hypocrisy and double standards. However, given that they usually associate the government of a country with its people, which I will also address in a bit, they usually see the governments of countries like China, Russia, Iran, and Cuba as representing the proletariat of the country. Just like every single political system that exists on Earth, however, the governments of these countries are usually entrenched loyalists with military ties to the leader of the country. They are rife with corruption, and unlike the West, where journalists do not usually disappear for criticism of the government, there are not many independent journals that can produce localized articles based within the country. This hostility towards a free and independent press in quote-unquote socialist countries is not the same as the type of media suppression that you find in the West, which is totally, definitely not free at all. Do not get me wrong, but failing to see the false equivalences that these people bring up between someone like Julian Assange and Mary Colvin is idiotic. Mary Colvin was literally bombed by Assad when he received the coordinates of where she was reporting from, because she was reporting on his war crime. The outrage that people like Richard Medhurst have over Julian Assange is nowhere near the outrage that they should have over imprisoned journalists in countries whose regimes they supported, like Assad. This is why people who express vocal support for Assange are usually an immediate red flag to me. They are bandwagoners who know nothing of his true legacy as not just a hacker, but a hack with a pro-Putin bend. Assadism is a national socialist ideology. You heard me right. It is not Marxist-Leninist, and it is not socialist or even Ba'athist. It is a fascist, totalitarian, and militaristic dogma. Anything less than absolute support for our eternal leader Hafez al-Assad is treason and should rightfully be met with the full force of the state. This means arbitrary arrest, torture, and extrajudicial killing. These are the views endorsed by most quote-unquote independent journalists you see in alternative media like The Grayzone, Jimmy Dore, Russia Today, Press TV, El Mayadeen, Sana under Assad, etc. Now, anti-imperialists will try to claim that they did not endorse Assadism, but that they were simply against any Western intervention. However, this stance placed Assad, instead of the Syrian people, at the helm of Syria's sovereignty. These grifters were not against Russian or Iranian intervention in Syria, something the majority of Syrians absolutely despise. They approve of these forces occupying Syria because they were quote-unquote invited by the quote-unquote legitimate president of Syria. This is an Assadist view. If I told you a trust fund kid is leading an organization because he was the oldest living son, in any other context you would question their qualifications and legitimacy. For some historical context, when Hafiz al-Assad died, Bashar was only 34 years old. The law in Syria stipulated that the president must be at least 40 years old. So what did the state do? It literally changed the constitution to allow for a younger president. The minimum age? 34. Gee, I wonder why. Hafiz al-Assad seized power through a military coup in 1967. This was the same time Syria was at war with Israel. A Mossad agent, Eli Cohen, literally funded the Ba'athist campaign that brought the party to power. In 1967, it is said that Hafiz al-Assad retreated prematurely from the 6 Days War and practically handed Israel the Golan to guarantee his power. During the 2011 uprising, protesters literally shouted slogans calling the Assad family Golan sellers. His defenders even admit that this was better than Damascus being occupied by Israel. Ever since, the Assad regime has ruled under martial law, suspending human rights in the country and allowing the military to fully immerse itself into state affairs. This is Assadism. You cannot be against Assad while acknowledging their rule as legitimate or having any legitimacy over the Syrian people. It's pathetic. So now that I have hopefully laid to rest that these three follow the same ideologies, that of Campism and Assadism, I will lay out the many reasons why they are not credible sources of information regarding Syria. Madame Susli, or Partisan Girl, or Syrian Partisan Girl, or Partisan Girl Syria. She goes by many names. Either way, I thought I'd get her out of the way first because it's kind of the easiest. She is probably the most unhinged and has the longest record that's public and there for you to see. She actually got in a lot of Huff articles for some reason. She has pushed Nazi and openly anti-Semitic talking points. No, not in the way Zionists accuse anti-Zionists of it. She is a full-on New World Order reptilian lizards globalists type. She leans into outlets like InfoWars and Breitbart, flirting with white supremacist audiences and even once hosting the former Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, David Duke, on her show. She has laundered regime apologetics through conspiracy culture, enough that mainstream outlets flagged her as a disinformation vector rather than a commentator. She touts a science degree while denying Assad's chemical attacks, leaning on fringe claims and selective skepticism that nobody credible takes seriously. Her own background is murky and often contested, with rumors noting questions about whether she is even Syrian, a tension she likely papers over with her SSNP ideology that treats Lebanon as part of Greater Syria. She appears on Russia Today and the Iranian Press TV, recycling false or misleading claims and selling certainty to audiences that she primes to distrust everyone except the anti-imperialist grifter like her that virtue signals anti-Americanism. Richard Medhurst. He's another pivot story dressed up as moral clarity. He's half Syrian, half British. He bounced from a failed musician, like a rock star punk guy, to lifestyle vlogger before discovering that I guess genocide apologetics pays better, especially when framed as anti-imperialism. He lives in Germany, markets himself as an independent journalist, quote unquote, and reliably lands on whatever position flatters authoritarian power. He has appeared on and been paid by Russian and Iranian state outlets like RT and Press TV, while insisting that he's just asking questions and he's just a Syrian who's independent. His background is often used as credibility cosplay, though his Arabic is laughable, to be honest, even from me, whose Arabic is pretty broken myself. By the way, his father was also a UN peacekeeper. He worked for British intelligence and taught courses on deception. Finally, the guy has also faced serious allegations online related to the misuse of a Facebook group surrounding mental health, which he was accused of using to lure in minors, which he would then go on to verbally abuse and exploit. These are allegations that he has never addressed, but his friendship with Scott Ritter, a known predator, hints at a coziness with this kind of stuff. Kevork Almassian is hypocrisy incarnate, bro. Shout out to Armenian Syrians, genuinely. But this guy is a piece of work. He fled to Germany and built a platform there, then turns around and calls other Syrian refugees terrorists for doing the exact same thing. He aligned himself with and joined Germany's far-right AfD, laundering Assad apologia through European nativist politics while posturing as a defender of Syria. At his lowest point, he's even labeled Hamza, the 13-year-old boy shown earlier, a terrorist. His politics are purely motivated by Islamophobia, in my opinion. To him, a refugee is noble when they're Christian, but when it's a Muslim, he warns Europe against letting them in. Despicable. All three of these individual lunatics, while vehemently opposing Syrian resistance against the genocidal Assad government, full-heartedly supported Palestinians against Israel. Why? Well, like many unseemly characters, they laundered their reputation through Palestine washing. If you are correct on Palestine and say all the right things against Israel, all the rest is easily forgotten and forgiven. This is another common trait of campists and Assadists. Don't fall for it. Honorable mention to folks like Joshua Landis, who has made a long career out of being an academic that pretty much launders Assad's reputation as well. His father-in-law is literally one of Assad's officers. He's married to an Assad regime insider, and this is just an open secret that, you know, he pretty much flaunts it, and yet he's, you know, cited pretty often and invited for interviews on mainstream outlets. Propandco, this guy, I don't know much about him, but I see him on Twitter just always kind of fence-sitting, hair-splitting, doing all these things to kind of seem on the Iran side, but also seem like he's critical of it. Yeah, shout out to Mustafa, he just asked me to throw him in there too. But anyways, Assad is a mass murderer of Muslims, Arabs, Palestinians, Syrians, Palestinian Syrians, Lebanese. He is truly indiscriminate in that even his own Alawite sect was not safe from his wrath. Except when he targets minority communities, he does it without a beard and without saying Allahu Akbar, so it's secular. Anyways, I wrote this script before Assad fell, but I still felt it necessary to produce and upload since these grifters have still not stopped grifting. I guess they just do it for the love of the game. Thankfully, at least now, if they ever stepped foot in Syria and were recognized, they would get what's coming to them. You know, a fair and just trial for spreading misinformation against Syria. That's all I'll say. Someday I hope they can be extradited from their places of refuge and tried for the lies that they spread while Syrians were being massacred by Assad. Let me know if you'd like me to also make a video about the non-Syrian grifters of Syria, because there's still a whole ecosystem that I haven't even brought up or mentioned. This was a fun video to make. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like the video, leave a comment. I also have a Patreon. I'm trying to make some more videos in 2026, and yeah, keep me accountable. I'd really appreciate that. Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Shout out to Valentine Wiggin, to Emma, to Ali the Highest, to Edward, the real OGs. Thank you.